The International Criminal Court, or ICC, has begun its investigation into war crimes committed by Israel and its IDF in the West Bank and Gaza Strip from December 2019. Though Israel does not recognize the authority of the ICC, both Jerusalem and Washington issued a rebuke on this move. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu lashed out at the court in a recorded video.
The state of Israel is under attack this evening. The biased ICC in The Hague made a decision which is the essence of anti-Semitism and hypocrisy. It determined that our brave and moral soldiers, who are fighting against the cruelest terrorists on earth, they are all war criminals. It decided that when we are building a home in our eternal capital, Jerusalem, it's a war crime. The ICC, which was established to prevent a reoccurring of the horrors of the Nazis, instigated against the Jewish people, now turned against the state of the Jewish people.
His remarks came after U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris joined Netanyahu on a call to reaffirm the U.S.'s, quote, opposition to the ICC's attempts to exercise its jurisdiction over Israeli personnel, and underscored the country's unwavering commitment to Israel's security. So here to weigh in, former UK MP George Galloway. So George, you just heard it there, Bibi's harsh words to the ICC. The ICC is meant to serve as a last resort when a country's own judicial system is unable or unwilling to investigate war crimes. So which is it for Israel? Are they unable or unwilling to investigate themselves?
Well, once again, we have the isolation twins of Israel and the United States standing against the whole world. It's not just the European Union, of course. It's the whole world. It's Africa. It's Asia. It is the Latin American countries. It is just the world against Israel and the United States. And that's not really a good place to be. Everyone can't be out of step except you and the state of Israel. So it's a very foolish approach to take to this, whether you recognize the court or you don't. I mean, if you don't recognize it, why are you even talking about it? Why are you even attacking it? When the people in the court decide that there's a prima facie case that the Israeli state has broken not its own laws, that's why its own courts are not the legitimate jurisdiction for this, but broken international law, particularly law which relates to territory occupied by military force, which of course Gaza and the West Bank and East Jerusalem are.
Well, George, to Israel's credit, some of it here, in the past, they have opened many probes into troop conduct and have found some of their own guilty of various crimes. Could the ICC's move then exacerbate the upcoming talks between the U.S. and Iran on rejoining the JCPOA, given America's commitment to backing Israel?
Well, it will certainly throw up in sharp relief the double standards involved here. And Israel's judicial system deals admirably, not least with high-ranking politicians, including Mr. Netanyahu, who may very well soon be going to prison. But what we're talking about here are crimes against international law, which the Israeli state cannot, by definition, examine impartially, because the state is accused of breaking the laws of the Geneva protocols and many others that govern the conduct of an occupying force. And there's no getting away from this. Either the West Bank and the Gaza are occupied territories, or after 57 years, they have now de facto become a part of Israel, in which case the people in it will have to be given the vote.
Well, George, there it is. Under the Geneva Convention, following the 1967 war, Israel annexed East Jerusalem, and as we know in recent years, has expanded settlements in that area, which, as you noted, is a violation of the convention principle that an occupying power is barred from transferring its population to those captured territories. So how can Israel defend against that war crime? You heard Bibi say that this is their land.
Well, it isn't, I'm afraid. They may wish to acquire it, hold it, and keep it against all international law, but it will never be their land. The law is very clear on that. Israel violently, militarily occupied this territory in 1967. The fact that it's held on to it all of this time with greater or lesser extent of use of force is completely immaterial. If I seized Miami Beach, and I'd like to, if I held on to it for 57 years, it wouldn't become mine. People have to look at it through the eyes of the law which governs militarily occupied territories, and they're simply turning their face away from it. And I can understand why they do that. What I don't understand is why an American government would give them a blank check so to do, because that's dragging your country's reputation down, as well as Mr. Netanyahu.
And lastly, George, Hamas welcomes this move, obviously. They say that their rocket attacks into Israel in 2014 were legitimate. The ICC says that they will examine Hamas's role in this as well. So what about that?
Well, international law should be completely impartial in dealing with alleged crimes against humanity, war crimes, breaches of international law, the Geneva Protocols, and so on. So I have no problem at all with that. But you cannot equate these two forces. One is a ragged Islamist band of people that are fighting against the original crime. And the original crime was the seizure and ongoing occupation of the territory. That will never change, however much people are blackguarded for saying it, however much I'll be attacked for saying it right now on your television show. That will never change. These territories were seized by force, and they must be given back, or they must be formally, properly incorporated into the state with agreement of the occupied population, who must be given the right to vote. You can't have it both ways.
Absolutely, George. You bring up very valid points. You cannot have it both ways. It'll be interesting to see how the coming weeks go with this. Always appreciate your insight, George Galloway. Thank you.
Thank you.